Are we live?
We're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Funny Shrink Podcast. I'm Mike Cateo, the Funny Shrink, and we have Frank King here. Say hi, Frank.
Hey, guys.
We are excited for our very special guest this week. Frank, why don't you tell them a little bit about our guest?
Our guest actually is a comedian and a speaker, speaks on customer service and also, I would say, on empathy, the power of empathy. He won a couple of comedy contests, stand-up comedy contests at two of the biggest comedy clubs in Philadelphia. His style is one that not too many people do anymore. It's one-liners. It's sort of, I guess he grew up going to the Catskills every summer and really fell in love with that style of comedy of Shecky Green and those guys. And anyway, he's a great friend of mine. And I take a bullet for him, not in an organ, in fleshy tissue.
But you take a bullet for yourself, Frank. That's not much of
Well said. Please welcome Glenn Freezman.
Hey, Glenn.
There he is.
Welcome. I'm sorry, my finger wasn't on the right button. That's what she said.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Glenn? Oh, we can't hear Glenn.
Uh-oh. Glenn is muted.
Is he?
Yep.
How'd that happen? Glenn.
I think he needs to unmute himself, I think.
I think we did. How we doing?
Glenn. Oh, technical difficulties.
All in a day's work.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great. It's nice to be invited.
Great to have you. So you do one-liners, huh?
Yeah, I grew up out going to the Catskills every year and sneaking into the late shows. And, when I grew up, everyone was doing what they called Jewish shtick. And Jewish shtick was one-line comedy. I got to watch Shecky Green and Mousy Lawrence and Dick Capri and Joan Rivers and Buddy Hackett and Milton Berle when they were literally 50 years ago.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, what was cool about their humor, it was a lot like the same as the songs that are written. Remember, one guy used to write the song and 50 people would do the song. Paul Anka would do it, Sinatra would do it.
Yeah.
Right, the Rat Pack would do it. Well, the jokes were kind of the same way because they didn't all have enough material. But the Borscht Belt had 11 different resorts that all the Jewish people used to go to. We didn't want to. It was just the law. So, we all went for, 1 week. Our place was Nevele, but the comedian would go there for the week, and then they would go to Raleigh. Then they would go to Concord. Then they would go to Fallsview. And they were just swapping each other's jokes to see which ones worked, and they worked. And so I was doing comedy for a bunch of years, trying to do it the way everyone else was doing it. And I found myself waiting for the punchline because I knew it was funny. And one night I walked out and said, you know what? I'm throwing out everything but the setup and the punchlines just to see what happens. And when I walked up, a lot of people said, God, I haven't heard that style, since Shecky Green was doing it in the 40s. And I'm like, maybe it's time it comes back. I said, Bell Bottoms came back. Why not? Why not one-liners?
That's beautiful, man. I love it because I love one-liners, but I don't have the memory for them. Like, I just can't keep on going. I'll forget the setup or the punch.
Right.
How do you remember that much material?
Well, it's funny. Frank told me in the very beginning to get them in blocks. So where they all made sense to each other. So they would be in unison. But then Frank and I honestly thought we were going to be speakers for a guy out in Canada that taught memory training. So we went to a 3-day course, and I remember not remembering much. But I did remember the first 10 things. And they were the obvious things, like number one was a unicycle. Right? Or a unicorn. Number 2 was a bicycle. Number 3 was a tricycle. Number 4 was a car. So they all made sense. So I would put those jokes, and I wrote all my jokes in 10s. and I would just put a different heading to each one of those sets in my head. So I would know 10 jokes at a time set up with those 10 words.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I was thinking pictures in my head the whole time, not really words, because I knew, like, you know, like the unicorn. What was the unicorn doing? Well, there was a guy on the unicorn. What was he doing? So in my head, I knew the joke.
Now, I hate when other people do this to me, but could you give me some jokes?
Yeah,
I would hear
for
them.
instance, the other, you know, I'm 56 years old, 57 years old. So, you know, I went out looking for a job. So I walked into one place and the guy's looking at my resume and he's pretty impressed. And he says to me, wow, he says, can you explain to me this 4-year gap in your resume? I said, oh, yeah, I was at Yale. He goes, you were at Yale? He goes, that's really impressive. You are hired. I said, thank God, because I really need this job. Right?
I get it.
So I'm sitting down with another interviewer. And, you know, on the wall, she's got pictures of that, you know, the band, and she's wearing the T-shirt for God, what was it? It was just that movie. She was wearing a T-shirt, and she had asked me in the middle of the thing how well that I could perform under pressure, because everything in her office was, what's the name of that band I'm thinking of? From Under Pressure. She sang Under Pressure. There was the movie, Guy Buckteeth, amazing. Queen. Right? So she has great Queen posters everywhere. So I figured, you know, she must be a Queen fanatic. So I said, you know, I can't really sing that great under pressure, but I could probably crush the notches my way. I mean, I got hired at an IT company. The guy asked me, what makes you so special? I should hire you. I said, well, I hacked into your computer system to get this job. I was there 5 minutes. The guy says to me, did you sign up for the 401k? I said, yes, I did, but now I'm a little worried. He says, what about? I said, I've never run that far before. I walk in there one day. The guy says to me, are you on drugs? I said, come on, boss. You and I both know you don't pay me enough to have a drug problem. You know, I'll tell you right now, we are going to do a little random drug sampling. I said, boss, you can do anything you want, but I will not try crack.
Yeah, and you won 2 comedy competitions at
I won the Philly,
correct?
Yeah, Philly Punchline competition, which is the big brand new club down there, and then I won the Helium competition. And there was nobody else in the entire place that was doing what I was doing. And I literally had them laughing from the second I started to the last joke I ended with.
That's amazing.
You know, and they're all that. And it's very few times. And because they're one every 10 or 12 seconds, if you don't get the one, I'm already on to the next one. And we both forgive you. You can laugh at the next one.
I performed at the Conchi Comedy Festival a few years ago. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. I actually was the best one there that night.
Hey, Glenn, tell Mike you got some work in New York off those gigs, off those wins, correct?
Yeah, I got an offer to work first at Broadway, New York, and then stand up New York, and then stand up Broadway.
Broadway Comedy Club?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And amazing venues, had incredibly good times. That audience sets up for me perfectly. There's nothing off limits. You know, a lot of my stuff is very innuendo, very right to the edge. Some of them actually stomp on the edge, but I was, you know, I loved New York. I just absolutely loved it. And I was booked twice a month in New York. I was getting booked in Philly and New Jersey. I was getting booked in Maryland. And of course, you know, just like everybody else, you know, I worked March 13th.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in and Fran Capo, who's I
know Fran, yeah.
You know Fran, she's like
I'm from New York.
Right, one of the sweetest people, right?
Right.
So she's a great guest for you guys. She has 13 world records. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records 13 times.
Wow.
Fastest speaker in the world. She's been down to the Titanic. She went across the zip line before they dove into the volcano. And you guys, all you'll have to do is say hello, and you may get in the word Fran.
Very true. Very true.
But you'll be entertained, and she's amazing. But I worked with her that night. I worked with Steve Young that night, who was the original owner. Frank, you would know him. He was the original owner of the Comedy Works when it was down on 2nd Street. And he was booking people, back in the day, 30 years ago, when Stephen Wright couldn't find a place to work after he crushed it on The Late Show.
Oh.
He crushed it on The Late Show, and his agent had nothing booked for him afterwards. They called Steve Young and begged him to get him on the shows. You got to find him a place to work because he's that good. Well, how good is he? Well, he just crushed it on the Tonight Show and went to the couch. We have nowhere for him to go tomorrow night. Steve Young says, "Well, I'll try to get him in between it was Leno and Robin Williams. I'll see if I can get him a spot." That's how hot the Philly clubs were back then.
Do you know Tim Grill?
I'm sure. Love Tim Grill.
Tim Grill and I did the Short Bus Comedy Tour together back in the day.
Did you really?
Yeah. He's a really good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and his kid is super cute.
I haven't met him yet. He looks adorable, though.
Oh, you haven't met him. You can meet him just through Facebook. He has 900 pictures a week.
I know. The guy's in love with his kid.
Yeah. I thought I thought they were going to rename Facebook McGrill's kid. Just seemed to make more sense.
So, we're the Funny Shrink podcast. We talk about mental health issues, and Frank tells me you have a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I do. I there's some I can only discuss with my attorney present. But, I do suffer from huge swings of depression, huge swings of anxiety. A couple of the shrinks felt that I suffered with borderline personality disorders. My wife just thinks I'm absolutely insane, and that's it. She really doesn't need a diagnosis. She just,
That's it.
Yeah,
borderline, that's my specialty. I love it.
Do you? It's such a great catch-all. And it allows me to be on the spectrum. Like I can feel wanted and like I have friends. Oh, I'm on the spectrum. Because when I was starting out originally doing the speaking, I said to Frank, my hardest thing is I'm a regular 52-year-old person that grew up in a normal household. I have no injuries. I have no ailments. I'm straight. I'm not, I don't, my kids are normal. I've never eaten my arm off on a rock to try to, survive. I haven't been eaten by a shark and got spit out. I have no idea what to speak on because I've had such a regular, normal life, and then he was kind enough to show all the problems I actually had. So
that was news to you, huh?
Well, it was total news, but everything was, it all made sense. In the end, it all makes sense that, I had gotten out of, when I had started working, I was 13. I started working out of necessity because my father, he had just gone bankrupt for the 3rd time. And we lost our house and we lost our cars. And at 13, I didn't know the expression, but it was kind of like, hey, if this is going to be, it's up to me. And I remember the night they took that 2nd car, I sat out on the curb and I swore to myself that this is not going to happen to me. And I don't know if it's a mental ailment. I don't know what it fits under truly, but I literally consciously gave up my childhood for my adulthood at 13.
Wow.
By going to work.
And I met a guy just within that week that by chance I was a latchkey kid because my parents both worked two jobs. So I used to go to a Y every day and play basketball. So I'd pack lunch. I'd leave school. I'd go to the Y. I'd eat my lunch at dinner. My parents would pick me up at 9:00. So I was at the Y basically from 1:30 till 9:00 every day. One day, a ball gets clinked off a ring behind me. I hear the ball coming over, and I hear the greatest 3 words in the gym is, "Hey, little help." So I had these hands literally at 13. So I reached out and I picked up the ball and I handed it back to him. And my first thought was, this guy's 6'5". I'm like 5'10". I always need a center. That's the one thing I have in my mind. I hand him back the ball. He's impressed by my one-hand grab. He asks me what I'm doing there every day. I tell him my story. I say to him, well, what are you doing here every day? He tells me he's a vendor. I say, well, what do you vend? And he says, Philly soft pretzels. And I said, well, I can certainly vend that. And I said, well, how much do your guys make? Where do you work? Where do you work? How do you work? Tell me the who, what, where's, why's, and how's. He goes, I just met you. I don't know anything about you. I said, Mitch, let me tell you something. You have the perfect job that I can do. I said, I need to be hired by you. He said, can I at least speak to your parents? So, and this goes back now, 30, 40 years. So this is before all the shit's going on in America, right? Like you could trust somebody who said, I'm going to take care of your kid. So he comes over, he meets my parents, and my parents say, yeah, look, he sees what's going on here. I give him credit. See how much he can stand it with you. Well, I spent five and a half years with this guy, sold well over 500,000 pretzels. My first month in with this guy, I say to him, Mitch, I've done the math. I know how much money we're making, or you're making, and I'm making, and my parents need $13,500 right now, where they're absolutely foreclosing and taking the house and taking the cars, and it's going to ruin us forever. So I need the money in cash, and I need it now. And I've done the math, and I can have you paid back in a year and a half with interest. And he says, absolutely not. And I'm like, looking at him like, what do you mean absolutely not? He goes, there's no way you're paying me interest. I said, that's your only rule? He said, that's the only rule. I said, you're going to give me the money? He says, yeah, I'm going to give you the money. He says, your work ethic is off the chart, and I know where your mind is, and I know where your ethics, morals, and values are. So I have no problem getting this money back from you. I said, great. He hands me the $13,500. I give it to my parents. You have to understand, at that minute, it changed 3 generations. My father was out of bankruptcy. My father got his cars back, which allowed my mother and father to go back to work. It changed my generation because I made a huge difference in someone's life and realized what true aid without asking is, what true giving without the expectation of a return is. And I learned it off of 3 words, hey, little help, which was kind of strange. Now, not only those 2 generations, but think of my kids. I grew up with a work ethic that no one else grew up with. Yeah. Fear and hunger are 2 wonderful inspirations. And that's what I grew up with, but I didn't know they were fear and hunger. I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing, other than the fact that when I was 57, like I'm now, okay, I am not going to be broke, and I am not going to be bankrupt, and I'm never going to let my kids see me this way. So, we sold 500,000 pretzels. He was repaid in a year and a half. I learned more lessons from selling pretzels. We sold pretzels from Maine to Virginia with every fireman's parade on every Sunday. Wherever there was a fireman's parade, we would show up. During the Apple Blossom Parade in Washington, D.C., we were there. Every Phillies, Flyers, Sixers. If there was a concert, if there was a circus, we were there. When I was 15 and 364 days, Mitch says to me, Glenn, if you could have any car you wanted in the world, what would it be? But it's got to be within reason. I said, Mitch, have you ever seen this car called the Oldsmobile Forenza? I said, it's really cool. It's red, white, and black. He goes, no, I don't think so, but, it's an Oldsmobile? I said, yeah. He said, well, we're working up in Langhorne tomorrow night. How about if we stop in and we look at it and see what it's like? I said, great. So we go into Faulkner Oldsmobile. And right there on the pedestal is the Forenza in white, red, and black, which is the color combination I like. I'm like looking at this car. I look at Mitch, and he goes, "Do you like it?" I said, "Yeah, Mitch is the car I like." He goes, "You want to buy it?" I said, "Are we going to swap them pretzels for it?" He goes, "No, I'm serious. Do you want to buy it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to buy it." He opens up a portfolio that has my name on it. And I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, you know how I've been teaching you this 80-20 rule since the day you started with me?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, now I'm going to teach you what it really means." He said, "Every time you worked for me, our deal was you don't even want to see the money, that all you wanted was 20% of what you earned, that you trusted me." I said, "That's correct." I said, "So every time I earned $10, you handed me $2. He said, "Where'd you think the other $8 went?" I said, "To pay off my bill." He said, "I know you're a numbers guy. Where do you think the rest of the money went?" I said, "It wasn't for me to ask." He said, "You trusted me that much?" I said, "You trusted me with $13,500. You went first." "Yeah, I trusted you." He said, "Okay, here's how much money you have. Would you like to buy your car cash?" And I said, "What's that leave me?" He said, "By the time you get to college, enough for your first 2 years." I said, "And where's the catch on that?" He said, "You have to understand 80-20 works. Live your life on an 80-20 rule. For the last 5 years, you didn't even know you had the other 80% and you lived off it, and you live like a king compared to the rest of your friends. Now, if you get married, you go to 70-30. You have a kid, go to 60-40. You have another kid, go to 50-50. You have a third kid, go 70-40. You have grandkids, go backwards, keep going. And then when they start leaving your house, bring it back again. You'll never go broke. You'll never go hungry." So, I know that mentally it cost me a lot of never having a childhood, because I honestly feel that the reason I do a lot of stand-up comedy, and the reason that I do maybe stand-up comedy that presses the limits, is what movie was I didn't get to sow my royal oats as a child. And I still have that inner child burning at me that still loves to blurt out the totally wrong joke, in my opinion, at the totally right time. However, in a lot of people's opinion, at the totally wrong time. But it should be the worst thing,
Well, and when you were in elementary school, your mom had cancer. And so your solace was being a class clown.
Yeah, well, yeah, he brings up a good point. The one thing that kept my mother happy was the sound of laughter. And there was the one thing I could always do with my mother was to go find her mascara and put on big bushy eyebrows and then a bushy thing and walk around the house and do Groucho Marx for her. And I realized that when she was laughing, she didn't have the ability to also be in pain. When she was laughing, she couldn't be angry at the cancer, because your brain cannot withstand those two emotions at one time. Your brain only has a spot for one of them. I had learned early on that the laughter increased those endorphins in her head at a rate of 10 times more than morphine. I had realized early on that I could really change my mother's life just by being funny. My mother happened to have a wicked sense of humor, which allowed me, no rules. So I became the class clown because that where else are you going to, cut your teeth? Right? So it was a perfect environment for me. Well, the issue, we'll call it an issue, was that I was so good at it that when I went to sixth grade, they bought and built a brand new middle school for Philadelphia called the Baldy Middle School. We were the first grade to ever go to Baldy Middle School. We were there for 3 years. In the 8th grade graduation, 5 days before graduation, they were putting on a class play, or a class like montage of the last 3 years. So what they wanted to do was they brought on the marching band, they brought on the singers, they brought on the string band, they brought on all the different football players and clapped for them, blah, blah, blah. Well, someone got the bright idea to ask me to write and perform a Saturday Night Live skit.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And it was very, very well written, well rehearsed, dead on, had my material, except the night before we went to go on, I flipped on my television set, which I like to say I walked through 9 feet of green shag carpeting just to turn on that television set. And then I had to walk 9 feet back because I couldn't hear the volume just to watch Reverend Sun Young Moon. Do you remember him by any chance? He ran the Moonies. Okay. He was back in back around 81.
Yeah, it was a cult called the Unification Church. Everybody called them Moonies. They used to work the airports to beg money. And
his big thing was that he used to travel the country and marry. Reverend Sun Young Moon would marry thousands of couples at a time. So he was having one of these big events at Madison Square Garden in New York, and they were filming it. And every one of them were bald except they had the little pigtail going on in the back. And they would all get married at once, Unification Church. Well, I had the bright idea that why not have Reverend Moon leave New York City, travel through New Jersey, be seen in Philadelphia, be seen at Baldy Middle School, and not only that, be seen right at that very moment in front of 800 students, 31 teachers, the 31 assistant teachers, the 3 vice principals, and the 2 principals. Why not turn around and Reverend Moon the entire 8th grade? I thought it would be very funny. The 800 students also felt it was very funny. The teachers and the vice principals, not so much. Not so much. But only one of them. I actually walked back to my classroom.
Well, tell Mike.
Oh, wait a minute, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. They let me finish the show. I couldn't believe it. They let me finish the show, and I think it was because they were too stunned to stop me.
Why interrupt a good time?
Right, interrupt, right? And the place is going wild. So now everyone leaves, right? They clap, they leave, and I'm walking back, and people are like high-fiving me, and I have my 5 minutes of fame, and I go back to my classroom, and I'm sitting there. It's gone like 20 minutes. No one says a word. All of a sudden, the phone on the wall rings, and I just stood up and said, "Well, that's for me." And I got up and I walked to the principal's office, where Mr. Linus, who happened to be a friend of mine's father, I went to school with her. So he decides he's going to do the talking. He says, "Yo, kid." He was like a cross between Rodney Dangerfield and The Godfather. "Yo, kid, what were you thinking?" I go, "I just want to make everybody laugh." He goes, "Well, you did that, kid, but I'll tell you what, we all thought it was funny, but you, Miss Kramer, not so much, kid. She wants you expelled." And he says to me, "But I'm going to make you an offer that you can't refuse." Right? But he says it, "I'm going to make you an offer because you know I like the Jews." And I look at him and he smiles. He goes, "Now that's comedy, kid." He goes, "We are going to suspend you but not expel you. But kid, you can't walk for graduation."
What? Wow.
Right? Now, my mother's dying of cancer. It's probably her last time. She's not going to make it to my senior. My father wants no parts of this shit. He decides he's going to go fight my case. He marches back in school, meets with the vice principal, and says to him, "If that's where the boys sit, you must acquit." Like right out of O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, Johnny Cochran played
Johnny Cochran with the glove. If the glove fit, You must have quit. I'm like, okay. Well, anyway, he allows me to walk for graduation, which I do. We up against the clock here?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we got time.
All right. So I'm up against, so walk for graduation, and she grabs me leaving graduation. She still didn't have enough.
Miss Kramer.
Miss Kramer, she still has to get another shot at me. She says to me, and she has these glasses that she used to wear on the point of her nose. And she looks at me and says, "You're Mr. Funny Man. You think you're going to be anything, making people laugh and making people be, but the jokes and the laughter, you'll be nothing. You'll never be anything. You will be nothing." And that's how I left 8th grade. And I said to myself, watch. Just watch. Because I already had this, I was already stung by my father's bankruptcies. And now she's telling me I'm not going to be anything. I was so willing to give up my childhood at that point. Because at 20, when I walked back into Baldy Middle School, before metal detectors, not that I had anything with me, but you could literally just walk into a school. I walked into her classroom. And she said, and she looked at me and said, "Excuse me?" I said, "No, excuse me." I said, "You probably don't recognize me fully clothed, but I just wanted to come back and let your class know that whatever comes out of your mouth, you're full of shit. And if you ever tell another student that they'll never be anything, okay, make sure you remind them of the kid that owned 5 candy stores, got their parents out of bankruptcy, got a house out of foreclosure, got 2 cars off the impound lot, put themselves through college, okay, and is now opening up his second title insurance company." Miss Kramer, are you still teaching 8th grade math? She said, "I'm going to call security." I said, "You don't really have to." I said, "I think we're done here." So, it's...
The kids applaud?
The kids were, again, too stunned to stop me. And no, they weren't going to applaud because it was like midway through the year. They may have agreed or not agreed. But, number one, I had to hear it out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was, what do you guys call it? Cathartic for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a release of all that. It was a 7 years of pent up hatred were released. And not only pent up hatred, but it's that hatred mixed with the fear, mixed with the depression, mixed with the anxiety of what if this doesn't work? Mixed with what it's left me with was being a huge gambler and a huge gambler on myself. Because I believe that there's money to be made everywhere, because Mitch taught me that. I also believe that everyone would be nice to me. Mitch taught me that. I've learned, that not everyone is. The money store taught me that.
I had a similar something happen in high school. I had this teacher for Spanish, Mrs. Rosen. She did not like me, mostly because I brought a whoopee cushion into her class and kept on putting it off. I sat on the side with a bunch of kids, and we would go around and just sit on it. And when I got into the top state school in New York, and when I went back to my high school, I stopped in and said, "Hi, Ms. Rosen." And she goes, "Oh, what are you doing? What school you go to?" I said, "Binghamton." And she goes, "How'd you get into that school?" I'm like, "I like you too."
That's wild. That's great. You guys old enough to remember there was like a farting bear and a farting pig that when you squeezed it, it made the fart sound?
That's my wife's nickname for me.
Farting bear?
Yes.
I thought that was your Indian name.
Both.
Well, the reason I ask you that, and then it became when you open up the refrigerator, the pig in the cookie jar would oink at you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, that farting bear and farting pig made my buddy $15 million. And the way it got started is we were in Seattle, Washington, and I was doing a candy, and I used to advertise my stuff in his father's booth, and his stuff, his name was Hal Sternberg, was right next to me, and Hal stuff, he had like all the whoopee cushions and all like the Spencer gag gift stuff, that you would buy at a gag gift store. Well, right next to us was the beautiful line of Gund, Gund, stuffed animals, the real high-end, expensive Gund stuffed animals, and they made the monkey for Coco. The Coco was the monkey, then the gorilla who taught sign language.
Yeah.
Right. So they made the Coco gorilla. Well, everyone would come over and touch the Coco gorilla because it was so perfectly made, and so he had his little baby on his lap. It was just perfect. Well, Hank had the idea of, well, why don't we put the whoopee cushion underneath Coco? This way here, every one time someone hugs Coco, it'll fart. 5 times it took before he walked over to his father and he said to his father, "I'm going to China." For what? To invent a farting bear. He goes, "Watch." And the next kid walked over, and the little kid went, his father went, "Bye." $15 million.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I have a lot of crappy ideas too. Maybe one of them will make me some money.
Right. You never know. My buddy Mitch, who taught me, he said there's money to be made everywhere. You got to keep your eyes and your ears open. Right. So, would you think maybe a crappy idea, someone else is looking at it as that is the greatest idea I've ever heard?
That was supposed to be a fart reference. It kind of missed the mark. I'm just saying, I'll do better next time, Glenn. I promise. So your story, I love your story, man. It's a story of resilience. Like you've been through everything.
Yeah, but it's always been on good. They were always fun learning experiences. In the end, they were always fun. To me, there was always that challenge, and I grew up with that challenge. And Frank has that same thing. And it's not, I dare you not to tell me I can't do it. It's more like, I dare you to tell Frank that you won't do it for him. Because I know you can do it, and you can do it. I'm going to call on you to do it, and I expect you're going to get it done. So my thing never became about me, because my first win was for my parents, because I really didn't understand that I could go bankrupt and not eat too. I never came that full circle never happened to me at 13. I realized at 13 that was not going to happen to me, meaning I was going to be 40 and hungry. I still somehow in my head figured out that my family is still going to feed me. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, like I didn't put that together at 13. I put it together like for my later part of life, I'm going to be successful. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to starve to death tomorrow. So my first win had to be for my parents. I had to get their lives together. I had to get, so my mother could concentrate on, unfortunately, dying like a human being with her cancer, and my father could, have his businesses, so they weren't fighting, about money. Yeah. And then my next win came to really, and I mean, shove it up your ass isn't too difficult for this program, right? Does that work for
Yeah.
this? Shove
Yeah.
it up
I've
your
done
ass.
things up my ass before. It's okay.
You know, I wanted to be able to shove it up Kramer's ass. Honestly, I wanted to be able to say that you can't tell a 13-year-old you're not going to win. It's the
The
worst
big
thing you're ever going to tell somebody, and I'm going to prove it to everybody else.
the biggest motivator.
So,
Oh,
you know, that
sorry.
was a win. And then, you know, what I've done in what I was in the title insurance business for 31 years. And my greatest wins were not the times we closed 1,000 deals in a month, and not the time that I took the biggest bonus of my career, but the time that I saved a woman $23,000 because she was getting ripped off on a timeshare. And I looked at it and said, "This is not going to happen to you." She said, "Oh, I've been through the attorneys. I've been through everybody. I'm tired of fighting with these people. Can you please?" Yeah, right.
So you
And
were
I
able to help.
looked at that settlement sheet and I said, "Can you just can you give me like 5 minutes?" And the greatest part of the story is I was working.
Oh, I think we lost Glenn.
We did lose Grant. Hopefully he'll be back. One of the greatest things I heard from him was like the biggest motivator is here. He's back. He's back. Hold on, let me get him. Glenn, welcome back. I was just saying one of the biggest motivators for me, and it
You
sounds
got me?
like for you, is someone telling you you can't do something.
Yeah, but what I was trying to explain was it's not only telling me I can't do something, it's telling me I can't. It's telling me that something's not going to get done for someone that I love, or someone that I believe should have it done for.
Right.
I was never about me at all. I never cared.
You have a lot of loyalty,
But
it sounds like.
take Frank, for instance. Frank, he calls me up one day. He's telling me about his credit card debt and Wendy's bill. And I'm like, "Frank, I got a friend of mine that is, well, yeah, because my father taught me ethics, morals, and values, and Mitch taught me about the loyalty of life, right? That there's only a handful of people that are going to give you that loyalty, and it's up to me to find my handful to be able to pass my handful."
Oh,
Up
lost
there
Glenn
he
again.
goes again. Whoa.
Yeah, what Glenn is not telling you is he said, "Look, you need to refinance. The rates are great." I said, "Yeah, but I'm out of work and Wendy's a cashier and I'm not sure we can refi and pay off the cards." And, he called up somebody that he's close to in the mortgage business and we just got conditionally approved for a 30-year fixed mortgage, 2.99% with enough cash out to pay off all our unsecured debt, the credit cards and such. So,
That's incredible, man.
yeah,
Congratulations. I remember you telling me that.
So, it's life changing, especially at this point in time when we never know, we don't know when we're going back to work.
Right. It's huge. It's huge. I see Glenn. Let's see if we could get him back on. Hey, Glenn, welcome back. We are going to have to end in a couple of minutes, though. So we want to first finish your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for stopping by. Is there any place people can catch you? Is he muted? Nope.
Yeah, I think it's bandwidth.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. Well,
So
Right
if you
now,
want to get hold of
the
There you
best
go.
part is I'm just really on Facebook.
okay. So
Yes.
Glenn Freezman on Facebook.
Yep, and you can read the one-liners. You can he runs them by everybody on Facebook before he puts them in the act.
Sweet. That's awesome. That's a great way to laugh. All right. Thank you so much for stopping by, Glenn. I'm going to end the broadcast right now. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. It really does help. If you enjoyed the podcast,
We have
What?
the outro for that.
oh, that's
That
right.
better?
Then I'll just say, tip your waitresses. One of them is carrying my child.
We're going to edit this shit.
Yeah, there you go.